Chapter 6. When Yuya opened his eyes, he was standing in a quiet wood, enveloped in the light spilling out from the dark mirror.
How did this turn into such a giant hassle?
Grim shouted, making the leaves on the trees around him flutter. He had been complaining ever since he had woken up, and Yuya had explained the situation to him.
Look, Weasel,
Ace snapped.
this is all your fault.
Actually, I think it's your fault, Ace, Deuce interjected. You were the one who ran away to start with.
Sure, Ace is no saint here.
Grim agreed.
But you threw him at me. You're on the hook too, Deuce.
What? Deuce glared at him. Says the monster who climbed onto the chandelier. The evening sun that poured onto the woods was a fiery red, carving out deep shadows around the trees that were more threatening than simple darkness. The branches beckoned lazily, urging them farther into the forest. Yuya could sense the presence of birds and other small creatures, but they were all hiding in silence, perhaps afraid of this group of interlopers. The disturbing quiet in the eyes of invisible animals set Yuya on edge, not to mention that Grim, Deuce, and Ace had not stopped arguing once since they had left the cafeteria, and just being near them was exhausting.
Ah, there's a cottage over there,
he cried, pointing to a structure by the side of the river.
Maybe someone's home. They might know something about the mage stones.
He ran toward the small house as if fleeing his companions, but when he knocked on the door, no one answered. When he looked at the building more closely, he saw the roof and walls were covered in moss and the windows overrun with vines. He gave the wooden door a gentle push and opened it easily.
Huh?
So it's empty? Ace asked, peering in from behind him.
The place is a total wreck. I seriously doubt anyone lives here.
The inside of the house was dark and in poor shape indeed. The room was thick with spiderwebs, and it was clear no one had stepped inside in quite some time. As he examined the furniture, Yuya got the feeling that something was off somehow. The table was very small, as were the chairs lying on their sides on the floor, 7 in total, all in the same style. He wondered if they had been made for children and squinted to get a better look at the place. There was still a pot on the hearth, large enough to feed more than a few people. The shelves were cluttered with a random assortment of dishes and cutlery. The kitchen must have been bustling full of life back when people still lived there. Yuya was staring at the pot, now white with dust, and letting his thoughts wander to the cottage's former residence, when he suddenly heard Deuce's voice off in the distance. Hey! I found the entrance to the mine! Yuya walked over to Deuce, who was standing in front of a large hole in the face of the mountain. A narrow passage led into the rock, almost like it was being drawn into the hole, and it was so dark he could only see a few meters ahead. If we're going to find a mage stone, it'll be in there. Ace pulled out the flashlights he had brought along for this reason and handed each one to Deuce and Yuya. With nothing but these small circles of light to guide them, the group started into the mine. The tunnel was wider than Yuya had imagined, and the air was chilly. He could hear water trickling somewhere.
It's all damp and clammy and dark and scary,
Grim muttered.
Kinda like Ramshackle Dorm.
A ramshackle dorm? Ace frowned, confused.
Oh, that's the building Crowley's letting us stay in,
Yuya said hesitantly. He felt nervous talking to Ace for some reason. Deuce looked back at them from where he was walking up ahead, a puzzled expression on his face. Dorm? You're living on campus too? And, what are you anyway? Ace demanded. Where'd you come from? Yuya explained his odd situation as they advanced down the rocky path, heels clacking. Another world? Ace and Deuce exclaimed in unison when Yuya was finished. I didn't even know there were other worlds, Ace said, eyebrows high on his forehead. Me neither, Deuce agreed. First I've ever heard of it. Okay then, what if we don't find a mage stone and you get chased off campus? What then? Ace turned his flashlight on Yuya, questioning. Yuya squinted at the light. All he could offer in response was a feeble smile. What? Ace grimaced. If I'd known all that, I'd have... Shush! Deuce interrupted sharply. Did you hear that? At first, they thought it was the sound of the wind, the rumble of air as it slipped between the rocks and scraped up against them. But they could hear something else mixed in with it. Is it getting louder? Deuce whispered. It was a groan. Something was groaning. Just as Yuya came to this realization, he saw a dim light ahead. Where the corridor branched off, the disturbing purple light flickered and grew larger, approaching Yuya and the others. Plish, plish, plish. He heard liquid splashing, like droplets landing wetly on cold rock. Plish, plish, plish. The sound went on and on, planting seeds of fear in his heart.
Hey, guys!
Grim said nervously.
What is that?
The source of the splashing revealed itself slowly, and Yuya stared, stunned. He had no idea what he was looking at. No give! An enormous mass of dirt shuddered. It held a pickaxe and a lantern. It had hands and a body, but no face. In place of a head, it had a floating spherical ink bottle. The black ink inside oozed like coal tar and dripped slowly, drop after drop, out from a crack in the glass. The mass of dirt groaned like it was in pain. Stone! While Yuya and his comrades gaped, the mass of dirt brandished its pickaxe. Stones are mine! Ah! Deuce dropped and rolled away to dodge the sharp edge of the pickaxe as the blade sliced into the metal tracks at his feet like they were soft butter. What in the... he cried out, still flat on his backside. Seriously, what is that? A dirt monster? The pickaxe whooshed through the air toward Yuya, and he glued himself to the rock face of the tunnel wall, just barely avoiding the blow. How would I know? He cried wildly. I've never seen anything like it.
No one told me about no dirt monster!
Grim shrieked as he jumped to one side with Ace. He launched a fireball from his mouth, but it was swallowed up by the black fluid and snuffed out.
I can't believe my magic isn't working!
Get back, you giant dodo! Ace blasted the creature with his wind magic, but like Grim's flames, it was quietly absorbed. Get out! Get out! The monster roared. While it was focused on Grim and Ace, Deuce hurriedly got to his feet. He readjusted his grip on his flashlight, ready to start running the opposite direction from the monster, and then abruptly called out, Ah! A maidstone! Yuya followed Deuce's gaze and saw a glint of something catching the light farther down the tunnel. A glittering gem, half buried in the stone, so big that he could sense from just a glance that it was special. Even from afar, it was so beautiful that he stopped and stared in awe, almost forgetting where he was. Hey, you dolt! Ace roared angrily. Focus, giant dirt monster! Deuce turned and braced himself for a fight. He was glaring at the magical pen he was holding in both hands, and his lips began to move as he muttered something. Ace shot him a look as if to say they did not have the time for him to do whatever it was he was doing, and cast his wind magic at the monster once more. The pickaxe easily knocked the spell aside, turning it into a whirlwind that grazed the ends of Deuce's hair. When he danced out of the way of the mini tornado, a flash flood gushed out of all directions from the tip of his magic pen. Yikes! Ace cried, leaping out of harm's way. Deuce gritted his teeth in vexation. Be careful, you jerk! Right back at ya! Ace snarled. Can't you control that thing? The air between them crackled, an argument just waiting to erupt again. Ace! Deuce, come on! Yuya shouted. Grim was already sprinting out of the tunnel ahead of them. The three boys desperately chased after his furry backside. The moans of the monster and the chills of the air closed in around them.
It's gonna get us!
Grim wailed. Yuya gasped for air. His chest hurt. His throat was sticky with thirst. Every breath was a fight. He toppled forward, half falling into each step. But he somehow kept himself upright and concentrated on putting one foot in front of the other as quickly as he could. He wasn't the only one. They were all panting and wheezing and groaning. He wouldn't have been surprised if one of them had simply collapsed. Stones are mine! A roar ripped through the air, almost deafening them. Cripes! Deuce waved his magical pen wildly. I summoned the cauldron! A heavy thud echoed in the tunnel. Yuya looked back over his shoulder. The same massive pot that had previously fallen from the sky to crush Ace was now blocking the narrow, curving passage. Came a ferocious roar from the other side of the barrier. The monster howled in fury, but before long they heard a slithering, dragging sound, and they could no longer sense the creature's presence. Yuya stared at the cauldron and dropped to his knees as if in prayer, while Grim, Deuce, and Ace flopped back onto the ground, their chests heaving. They were all too winded to speak for a while. Finally, Ace raised his hoarse voice to make himself heard over all the panting.
That monster was a total gross-out. What was it?
No idea. Deuce shook his head weakly.
It was no normal ghost, that's for sure.
Grim managed a hint of a nod.
Ghosts aren't black, and they definitely aren't as scary as whatever that was.
The ghost who had come out of the walls at Yuya yesterday had been scary, true, but he figured that was more due to the surprise of encountering ghosts for the first time, rather than there being anything inherently terrifying about them. Sure, their love of pranks was a bit of an issue, but after speaking with them in the light of day, he felt almost fond of the funny little guys. The monster in the tunnel, though, that thing inspired real terror in him. His arms were still covered in goosebumps, and he rubbed them with a shudder. He wondered how he had known that the headless creature was a threat to his life the second he saw it. Chills had run up his spine as he felt a powerful, instinctive loathing of the black liquid dripping from the massive bulk. The way it looked, that voice, just remembering them made the contents of his stomach churn.
Can't have enough lives going up against a thing like that.
Ace got to his feet and glanced at the cauldron up ahead. He seemed to be considering something. He looked back. The entrance to the mine wasn't too far off. They'd come quite a distance in their flight from the monster. He shook his head.
Let's just give up and go home,
he said decisively, as though he had never been sure of anything in his life.
We can snag a maidstone someplace where there's not a monster bent on murdering us. There was that fork in the road right after we came in, yeah? We still got other places to look.
Huh?
Deuce looked up at him. How can you give up when the stone is right there? You all saw it. It was huge. We are 100% unexpelled if we bring that mage-stone to the head mage. We have to go back and get it.
No. Ace shook his head firmly back and forth.
That's an absolutely idiotic move. Going back in there with that thing?
It's not an idiotic move, Deuce protested vehemently.
We've only got 2 hours until tomorrow. We don't have time to go look for another one.
Listen, you, Ace let out a long sigh.
You're putting on a real show here, but can you actually take that monster out? Or is this like the chandelier, and you're just gonna charge in there with absolutely no plan and drag the rest of us down with you? You're a real pain in the butt, you know. If we're talking death or just letting time run out, I'll always pick time.
Chicken, Deuce said coldly.
What?
Ace glared at him. Deuce drew himself up and returned the glare. Pulling his chin in, his voice was low and threatening as he started in on the other boy.
You swagger around like you're the king of the hill, but you all talk, no action. If you weren't willing to put your life on the line, you never should have come here in the first place. If you're not willing to put your life on the line, then you shouldn't have promised that right from the start. Why don't you go back to your coop, you big chicken?
I don't want to be chased out of school either,
Grim cried, as if emboldened by Deuce's spirit. Ace winced ever so slightly and then smiled coldly, as if to say there was no way he was going to back down now.
Okay then, you two go on ahead with your sad little baby magic and fight that big bad monster. I'd like to see you try. Neither of you's half the mage I am.
Huh? Deuce cried. Oh, it's on. Go ahead and say that again.
How dare you call my magic sad?
Grim snarled. Yuya could only stand there, rooted to the spot, while they yelled and argued around him.
It's your fault! To start with, you...
Angry roars filled the air, battering both Yuya's nerves and ears. He hung his head and saw that his clenched fists were trembling. His heart was pounding as if it was going to pull itself apart, and he'd never been so out of breath in his life. He had been hot before, and yet now he was so cold he could hardly stand it. The tension was a living creature, stanking around him and holding him fast. He was not good with fighting. He hated it. And yet, from the moment he had arrived, it had been a constant stream of battles. The more he tried to avoid them, the worse everything got. Challenges, threats, arguments, violence. Bad things just kept happening. Was it his fault for not being able to stop it? Would he be in a different position now if he had been able to say something at some moment leading up to this one? Would he have been able to avoid this horrible quarreling? The commotion was so loud that covering his ears would do nothing, and before he knew it, he was shrieking, "Stop fighting!" All shouting ceased immediately. His companions had apparently been stunned into silence by the fact that Yuya was even capable of raising his voice.
You scared me.
Grim was frozen in place, all the hair on his body standing on end. Surprise also colored the faces of Ace and Deuce, but their expressions quickly grew surly again. "Stop fighting? Okay, buddy," Ace snorted in laughter. "Ha! Now you're Mr. Goody Two-Shoes? Listen up. You know who's going to be in the most trouble if we don't get us a Magestone? You. That's who. You've got nowhere else to go, right? So how can you stand there and be all, fighting's bad, let's all hold hands and be besties? You've got to be kidding me." He jerked his chin up as if to express his disgust at the idea with his whole body. Whatever Yuya said in response, Ace was no doubt going to sneer and laugh and make fun of him twice as badly. Normally, he would have turned his tail and run, but all the fighting had made him painfully aware that whatever he had been doing so far wasn't working, and the words came to him naturally. "That's not what I mean," he insisted. "You can't actually be saying we should give up now." Deuce scratched his head in annoyance. "Listen, to tell you the truth, I'm scared too, but we have to have that Magestone, and I'll do whatever it takes to get it. I've got 2 arms. I can spare one of them. And I'm saying I don't want anything to do with your desperate little mission," Ace told him. "If you hadn't gotten in the way, I would have had that monster," Deuce yelled. "As if," Ace rolled his eyes, "the only magic you've got any real control over is that stupid cauldron, and you weren't even aiming right back there." "Well, how could I?" Deuce retorted. "Anyone will need a minute or two in a situation like that." And they were off again. They snarled and snarked and got absolutely nowhere. As the two of them yelled about whose magic held back whom and how, Yuya remembered what the head mage had said about magic not being a panacea. As an outsider, magic seemed like a dream to him, but it was a lot harder to control than he thought. It sounded like Deuce was saying that you needed to be able to concentrate to make the magic do what you wanted. "I'm sure that I'll be able to stay calm and cast a spell if we go back in there." Deuce's voice had an empty edge to it, and his face looked pained, as if he knew only too well there was no way he'd be able to stay calm with an enormous, angry monster charging at him. "Ace is right," Yuya said finally. "We'll never dig out the Magestone like this. I think we'll only be beaten back if we try and go head-to-head with that monster."
What should we do then?
"What?" Yuya paused to think. "We could work together." "Work together?" Ace made a gagging face. "No thanks. Next you're gonna make us hold hands and sing a song or something." "I'm not." "Then what?" Ace demanded. "You didn't even do anything in there. You just ran away. So how exactly do you think you can work together with me?" He recalled what the ghosts had told him about the students at Night Raven College, people who prided themselves on their self-reliance, who excelled at magic. He was the most useless person there, the only one without any magical ability, and yet he was proposing that he could be of use to them. Now that he thought about it, why had Grim actually listened to him when they were facing off against the ghosts? Key. An odd sound, one that would never be found in nature, suddenly filled their ears. It was high-pitched and sounded tragic, like someone weeping. An eerie light floated in the tunnel, and the faceless bulk appeared in the darkness once more. The heavy pickaxe dragged behind it, digging into the earth. The hard metal cut away at the rock, producing the ear-splitting sound. "Mine! My stone! Mine!" the creature groaned. Alone in front of the monster, Yuya braced himself. He took a deep breath and shouted at the top of his lungs, "The stone is mine!" And then he whirled around and ran, clutching his flashlight.
Get out!
The monster lumbered heavily after him, moving bizarrely and seemingly at random, throwing its limbs about as if to set them free from its body. It seemed utterly impossible that this could have been the movement of something rational. Slipping through the large hands flailing around, Yuya ran with everything he had. He stumbled over a railroad tie that had long ago fulfilled its role of supporting the tracks and was now lying along the dark tunnel path. He fell. Ah! He shrieked as something grabbed his ankle. His leg was yanked back roughly, firmly, and his white socks turned black. At first, he could see a clear, defined handprint, but then the outline bled and spread outward like a spot of ink leaking inside of a pencil case. Yuya pressed his hands to the ground and tried to scramble backward as the monster steadily closed the distance between them. The pickaxe was slowly lifted high into the air.
Stone's mine!
The creature roared. I summon thee, cauldron! Rang Deuce's voice. A metallic clang filled the tunnel. Ever so tentatively, Yuya opened his eyes. The monster had been crushed under the cauldron and was kicking and struggling against the ground.
Yes, got him!
Deuce cried from behind a rock a few steps away from Yuya. He thrusted a clenched fist into the air.
The rest is up to you.
At his signal, Ace and Grim leaped out from their separate hiding places. Yuya stepped back as Ace brandished his magical pen. Small sparks crackled in the air around them.
You bet, I got this. One extra large gust of wind coming up, Ace shouted.
With a side of Grim's blazing hot fire! Meow!
Grim called. When Ace fired up a sharp blast of wind, Grim set his flames riding on top of the powerful breeze. The air strengthened the pale flames, and the two combined transformed into a massive, spinning vortex of flames that roared and swirled straight for the monster, swallowing its massive bulk. A scream echoed through the area. The heavy cauldron clattered and shook. Beyond it, Yuya could hear Deuce shouting, I got it! I got the Mage Stone! The hand he held up clenched a bright stone that dazzled the eye as it caught the light of the flames.
Yeah, let's skedaddle then,
Ace shouted, and then all turned and raced towards the exit. Yuya started to laugh in relief until he heard a heavy crrr behind them.
Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
The ground beneath their feet and the tunnel around them juddered and jolted. The roaring turned their blood to ice, and they reflexively stopped moving.
You've got to be kidding me,
Deuce muttered. The monster howled, drowning out all other sounds, and the rocks around them bounced up into the air. Shrush! Something stretched out toward them from the darkness, a hand dripping with black fluid. A hideously burnt cap crumpled and fell to the ground. Stone! A cracked head appeared before him, and Yuya gaped. Stone, give back!
Watch out!
Boom! Something wrapped around him, and he was shoved hard to one side. Yuya stumbled forward as there was a loud crash. When he looked back, a lantern was lying in pieces on the ground where he had been standing a second earlier. If he hadn't been knocked aside, the lantern would have smashed into him, and he would not have come out of that collision unscathed.
Eyes on the prize, man.
Ace patted his shoulder. It was only then that Yuya finally realized Ace had saved him with his wind magic.
This guy seriously can't take a hint!
Grim cried, as he sent balls of fire shooting toward the monster alongside Ace's burst of wind. Even enveloped in flames, their enemy continued to stagger forward, painfully persistent. Its sights were set squarely on Deuce and the Mage Stone in his hands.
Gotta stop it.
Deuce looked around uncertain.
Rope? No, a cage?
But anything's fine, Yuya shouted. Anything? Deuce glared at the monster as if shaking off his indecision. I summon thee, cauldron. The magical pen he held high in the air flashed sharply.
And cauldron, more cauldron, and now the finishing blow. Cauldron!
Yuya winced at the succession of ear-splitting metallic crashes until he heard a snapping sound like the breaking of glass. He stared at the pile of large cauldrons and watched a black puddle leak out slowly from behind them. When they headed out of the mine this time, nothing stopped them. The moon offered a gentle welcome as they exited the tunnel, the pale light splitting between the leaves of the trees, dazzling their eyes, and they grew weak with relief, letting their guard down at last and sinking to the ground on wobbly knees. The grassy earth was soft, and the air that entered their lungs no longer held the clammy chill of the mine, but was filled with a refreshing verdant scent of the trees. "Hey," Ace said, lying on his back, chest heaving, "there's this thing that's been bothering me." "Yeah? What?" Deuce asked, too exhausted to even turn his head toward Ace. "How come you can only make that cauldron, man? I mean, there's gotta be other stuff you could summon, yeah?" There was a brief silence, and when Deuce finally answered, there was a sulky edge to his voice. "It's the only thing that pops into my head when I'm all worked up in the moment. Like, you think sorcerer, you can think cauldron, you know?" "Okay, that is the most one-track of one-track minds," Ace muttered, exasperated, and he let out a short, seemingly accidental bark of a laugh. "Ha!" This was followed by another and another, until he was howling with laughter. Perhaps out of their own giddy relief, Grim and Deuce joined in, and eventually Yuya too was rolling around giggling. "We really went and snatched that mage stone right out from under that weirdo monster," Ace said between bouts of laughter. "I can't even believe it." "Yeah," Deuce agreed. "And it's all thanks to you for getting us on track." I mean, all I did was run away," Yuya blushed. "You guys did all the work." The plan Yuya had proposed was that they used him as bait. He had thought harder about the time he and Grim had beaten back the ghosts and how they'd run around Ramshackle dorm together. He remembered the satisfied smile on Grim's face as Yuya held him. If he remained standing on the sidelines, merely watching, he was sure Grim would never have agreed to work with him. It was only after Yuya threw himself into the fight that Yuya had gotten on board with him. This time, he had decided he would draw the monster's attention while the others got into place and prepared. That way, Deuce could focus and make sure his magic hits the target, and he figured Ace and Grim could be pretty strong if they combined their powers. When he outlined his ideas, the other three had been speechless, so he'd felt a little twinge of satisfaction. Yuya was a mere human being. He had no special powers. Grim, Ace, and Deuce were grand wizards in comparison, which was why he had been able to trust them to handle the monster. He'd been terrified to stand in that tunnel alone, but he had pushed forward with his belief that the others would come through for him somehow. "So, you see, it's all thanks to you guys," he said, and Deuce shook his head. "You're the one who came up with the plan," Deuce said. "And, I mean, that was a seriously wild idea, using yourself as bait, but you totally pulled it off, dude. You've got serious guts." Yuya found it odd how Deuce's speech would get a little brash every so often, but he grinned at the enthusiasm behind the words. "Deuce is maybe totally right there," Ace readily agreed. "That was a pretty good plan. Even the furball's sad little magic's not so sad with my help. That's how you do it." Yuya expected complaints like,
"It's not sad,"
or,
"I'm not a furball."
but Grim didn't even so much as make a peep. "Huh?" He sat up. "Grim, what are you doing?" He was digging through the grass near the entrance to the tunnel.
"Something smells amazing."
He sniffed around, nose wriggling, and his claws came up against something.
"Found it! This is it!"
He held up a black object about as large as a gumball. It rolled around his palm and looked to be as hard as a rock. They all peered at it. "Hey, wait," Deuce frowned. "Is that a mage stone too?" "Nah," Ace shook his head. "I mean, I've never heard of a mage stone black as coal." Yuya looked over at the large shining mage stone in Deuce's hand. This new stone was dull in comparison. Rather than reflecting the light of the moon, it seemed to suck every last drop of it. "That monster was black too," Ace noted. "Maybe it's part of the wreckage. It's obviously not the same as the other stones here." "Now that you mention it," Yuya said, "I might have kicked something while we were running away." Grim's tail switched from side to side.
"Ha!"
He stared enraptured at the black stone and began to tremble uncontrollably.
"I can't!"
he cried at last.
"I gotta go for it! Time to chow down!"
"Huh?" The three boys gaped as the black stone disappeared into his open mouth. Grim crunched away on this lump of unknown origin found on the side of the road and then suddenly pressed his hands to his mouth as his eyes grew wide.
Meow.
Are you okay? Yuya cried worriedly.
Yummy.
Grim sprang up into the air.
Rich in flavor and full-bodied, like sweet fragrant flowers bursting into bloom on my tongue. A whole field of them right in my mouth.
He licked his chops deliciously and did a little skipping dance. He seemed to truly relish this black stone. You picked that up off the ground and ate it? Yuya was exasperated. Gross! Ace made a face beside him. Monsters must have real weird tastes. Don't you dare eat this by accident. Yuya looked at the stone and nodded. Okay, let's go. We gotta give this thing back to the head mage. Chapter 7. Pardon? You're telling me you actually went to the enchanted mine in search of a maidstone? Curly's stunned cry greeted them when they barged into the head mage's office. I'd assume you'd soon give up and return. Deuce rolled his eyes at this unexpected reaction. It wasn't like that was an option. I'd say I'd do anything. Indeed, you did, but... Curly shrugged. Never in my wildest imaginings did I think you would actually return with a maidstone. I'd heard that mine was picked clean long ago, so I went ahead and preparing with your expulsion documents.
Are you serious?
Grim shook with anger.
While we were fighting that huge monster, you were expelling us?
Monster? Curly blinked at him. Yeah. Ace leaned forward toward Curly. We got into a real tangle with this super strong, totally nasty monster. They told the head mage about what they had encountered in the tunnel. The shape of it, the voice, the horror. When they were done explaining how they had finally overcome it, Curly covered his face with his hand.
Oh.
He moaned.
Oh.
What's the matter? Yuya asked timidly.
Oh.
Curly's cry grew louder and morphed into a howl.
What's this guy's deal?
Grim arched an eyebrow at the head mage.
Bursting into tears in the public?
It can't be. Curly sniffed and pressed his hand to his mask. To think that the victorious day would come when the students of Nightraven College joined hands to defeat a common foe. I did not hold that guy's hand, Deuce exclaimed. Oh, and like I would hold yours? Okay, I'm out. That's too creepy. Ace shot back. Deuce and Ace pointed at each other and scowled. Lines cutting deep into their faces. But perhaps seeing that even in this, they were in sync. Curly nodded happily and said, I'm extremely grateful in this moment. Huh? Yuya craned his head to one side, and Curly clasped his shoulders. My doubts are allayed, he said. You have a gift. A gift? Yuya's eyes grew wide. Me? What? You possess the talents of a beast tamer, the head mage declared. Beast tamer? Yuya was baffled. What even is that? Curly grinned at him brightly. Ever since you regaled me with the tale of how you vanquished the ghost with Grim, I have wondered if that might not be the case. Ace and Deuce ignored the big reveal and continued to quarrel. Curly watched this out of a corner of his eye and leaned forward and began to speak. The truth is, my students have all been selected by the Dark Mirror for their exceptional talent and potential as future mages. Yes, Yuya nodded. You told me that before. But at the same time, great talent begets great egos, Curly said. Most of our students are quite proud and headstrong. They're so self-reliant and self-centered that they'd never even consider cooperating with others. I'd heard that too, he responded after a moment. This was the point the ghost had pressed upon him, but given that the person in charge of the institution was saying the same thing, he realized the issue must be more serious than he'd imagined. Sniffling, Curly tentatively patted Yuya's shoulder.
You possess no magic, yet despite that, or perhaps because of it, you were able to convince those who can use magic to work together for a common goal, you. I'm certain that you are a vital resource for this school. My educator's intuition tells me so.
He fell silent again. The eyes that peeked out from behind his mask firmly focused on Yuya. Head mage? He had no idea what Crowley was thinking.
I have made my decision,
the head mage said finally in a quiet voice.
Tripola, Spade, you have found a magnificent mage stone that is perfect for this chandelier. As promised, I hereby revoke your pending expulsion.
Yes! Deuce pumped his fist into the air.
I get to stay at school.
Not. I knew it'd all work out. Ace put his hands on his hips and shook his head in exasperation and satisfaction. Happiness crept onto his face as it slackened into a smile. Crowley turned toward Yuya.
Furthermore, you...
Yes, sir. He stood a little taller.
I am granting you the qualifications necessary to attend school at Night Raven College.
What? As an actual student? He had to have misheard that, but Crowley's smile remained firm. A student? Really? You mean I don't have to be a janitor anymore?
Yes. Did I not just tell you that you are exactly what we need at this academy? Thus, we must offer you an appropriate welcome. It is extraordinarily kind of me, of course,
he concluded enthusiastically. Yuya looked toward Grim. The small monster was standing alone off to the side. His drooping ears shadowed his face, hiding his expression from Yuya, but his rounded back seemed wretched somehow. Yuya was about to call out to him when Crowley's gold fingernails snapped out at his nose.
Halt this instant. There is, however, one condition for your admission.
A condition? Yuya's heart sank.
Not to keep harping on the fact, but your inability to use magic for a mage is unacceptable. You would not be able to adequately pursue the school's curriculum, not to mention perform the basic tasks of daily life.
He sniffed.
To that end, Grim...
What?
Grim lifted his face and Crowley met his eyes.
You and you will be permitted to enter Night Raven College as one joint student, the head mage told him.
Oh, one joint student? Yuya's heart leapt back up. You mean...
I can attend this school too?
Grim asked, stunned.
Basically, yeah,
Ace said.
Probably,
Deuce agreed. Grim's face lit up as he raced over to Yuya. He climbed up to Yuya's shoulders and used them as a podium to lock eyes with Crowley.
I could be a student at Night Raven College?
Yes.
Really?
Really? Really? You are persistent, If you must have proof, here.
Crowley waved his staff, and small particles of light rained down on Grim. Glittering, they came together in soft threads and gently stroked the white fur of his neck. The light concentrated around his torso, bounced back, and disappeared.
There, in place of a magical pen, I suspect your paws cannot handle the implement.
Oh, sweet! A mage stone just for me!
Once the particles of light cleared away, a pale purple stone hung from a ribbon around Grim's neck. The color was different, but it was the same size as the stones in Ace's and Deuce's magical pens, a badge of studenthood at Night Raven College.
Oh, right! I look awesome, you!
Grim danced about in delight.
Check it out! My very own mage stone!
That's great, Grim. Yuya pulled the monster down from his shoulders. He spent a mere 2 days with Grim, and he couldn't say that the monster had been anything close to friendly or cooperative. He'd attacked you the second they'd met and was selfish and quick to pick a fight. Even 2 days were enough for Yuya to see that Grim was the type of troublemaker that he'd normally try to stay away from. At the same time, it was painfully aware of how badly Grim wanted to be a sorcerer. There was nothing Yuya was devoted to in the same way. And perhaps that was why just seeing Grim rejoicing made his own heart sing. "Congratulations," he said, and really meant it. Grim grinned with all of his teeth. Smiles appeared on Ace's and Deuce's faces as well. "Pretty great, huh, you?" Deuce said happily. "And you too, Grim." Perhaps not hearing him, or perhaps simply ignoring him, Grim kept humming to himself, lost in ecstatic daydreams.
I am amazing! The best of the best, cream of the crop! I'll be a great mage in no time flat!
Hey, Ace whispered in Yuya's ear. Is he okay? Deuce asked. Probably, Yuya replied. But Deuce looked dubious. Yuya knew how he felt. Stay strong. Ace slapped his back. The two of you are one person now. You gotta keep a tight rein on that Grim, you know? Two as one. They were in this together. If Grim stirred up trouble again, they might face expulsion. Oh, rest assured on that point. I have thought that through. Here, you, for you. The head mage held out a small camera. This is a ghost camera. It's an old magical artifact able to capture parts of the subject's soul. I would like for you to photograph Grims and other students with this camera, make a record of your campus life, and report back to me. The head mage glanced at Grim. He was dancing around, waving his fists, tail swishing back and forth. It's all fine and good to be in high spirits, but I ask that you please report to me immediately when his high spirits reach new heights and lead to mischief. I understand. Yuya nodded firmly. Now then, Crowley cleared his throat. The hour has grown late, so further details shall have to wait till the morrow. You are all dismissed. Return to your dorms. Good night, sir. The students thanked Crowley and left the head mage's office. Ace let out a big yawn. The head mage was right. I'm seriously wiped. Come on, Deuce. Let's head back to the dorm. Yeah, I'm exhausted. Deuce agreed. I'm going straight to bed. Yuya called out as they started to walk away. Thanks for everything today. Ace and Deuce looked back at the same time and grinned. We're classmates starting tomorrow. Deuce waved. See you then. You've got this, you. That was perhaps the first time Ace had called him by name. Yuya stared absently as they headed off, and Grim jabbed him in the shin.
Hey, you! Time for us to book it too! Back to Ramshackle Dorm!
Apparently the name Ramshackle Dorm had stuck, but Grim didn't seem particularly bothered by it anymore. Bursting with happiness, he yanked Yuya's hand.
We gotta hurry up and go to bed! I mean, we're not janitors no more! Tomorrow, we'll finally...
He jumped up and down, and the mage stone around his neck glittered.
We're finally starting a new, dazzling life as students at Night Raven College!
This has been Disney Twisted Wonderland Rose Red Tyrant the Novel, Part 1. Written by Jun Hioki. Original concept, cover art, and illustrations by Yana Toboso. Translation and adaptation by Jocelyn Allen. Fan recorded by Kit Michaels. All rights reserved. If you want to continue the story, be sure to purchase the novel at your local bookseller or online. If you want to know more about this IP, be sure to download the game Disney's Twisted Wonderland off of Google Play or the App Store. If you want to know more about Twisted Wonderland, be sure to purchase its comics, manga, and any other Twisted Wonderland merchandise. Please support the original creator so that way we can get more Twisted Wonderland. Also catch the anime that's going to come out October 2025. Thank you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.